Good evening, ladies and gentlefolk. This is Senex, and welcome to the third analysis piece that I will be doing for the fewer resources per base map. Today, we're going to be looking at specifically Terran Mech play, which is a really interesting thing in fewer resources per base games. I've seen a lot of people saying, for example, that they just straight up don't think it will work, and I'm not necessarily sure I'm willing to go that far. I think it will definitely need to undergo some very noticeable changes over the ordinary mech style that we see played on a lot of things like Shakura's Plateau and other ordinary resource maps. But I do definitely think it's viable. You just kind of need to change how you're thinking about it. And DookaDooka, who is the orange Terran in the top left, who will be our meching hero for this game, has a very, very interesting approach. He's going to be going against Holophonist, who is the purple Zerg in the bottom right. So I'm not going to be hiding the replay tab right now, or actually at any point during this cast, just because this is much more for analysis than for pure entertainment value, so I don't mind showing people how long the game is. But because you can see this is an almost hour-long replay, and it's like unbelievable amount of time that eventually is consumed over the course of this game, I'm going to be fast-forwarding through noticeable parts of it, particularly parts like this, where there's just really not too much going on. It's very, very standard. Hatch first, with the spawning pool, is going to be a gas going down in just a second for our Zergy, and the very, very standard one barracks, taking the gas just so that his opponent cannot steal it from him type of play for DookaDooka. So I'm going to speed this up actually to ×4 just so that we can start getting to the more interesting stuff. There's a little bit of fake bunker play right here, but it really doesn't come to anything aside from making Holophonist lose a little bit of mining time, though actually Dooka accidentally loses that without a cancel, so a bit of a mistake right there. So he ends up building his own command center, builds his first factory, and is going to, in just a moment, float this over to make a reactor. There we go. So now I'm going to slow this back down to normal speed, because this is where we see the first kind of interesting things that Dooka is doing in this game. What he is, if you didn't just ignore this factory for a second, ignore the factory that is the second one being built. If you didn't have that on the map, this would be a very, very standard FRB style reactor Hellion expand. You take your expand before you end up getting the reactor Hellions, you take maybe a third pretty quickly thereafter, and you're just able to put a whole bunch of pressure on your opponent with the ordinary reactor Hellion, and probably transition into some kind of bio or biomech play. Instead, Dooka is playing the exact same thing, not doing any kinds of really crazy transition, keeping things almost identical, except throwing on this second factory and getting a tech lab for Blue Flame. And I think that that's one of the smoothest and nicest transitions into a new style I've really just seen in most games, because he's able to really change what he's going to be going for in even the kind of like early mid game, and not have to go totally nuts trying to get like a whole bunch of bizarre tech at different times. He just builds one extra production structure, gets one upgrade, and then produces things that he would have been producing anyway. And I think it's an absolutely fantastic approach for him at this point in the game. He also has this third command center up. Very, very nice. So I'm going to speed this up just a little bit so that we can get to the first critical point that I want everybody to take away from this game. So I'm going to just actually slow it back down because it's just about to happen. We see Dooka immediately trying to put pressure on his opponent. This is an extremely good wall for Holophonist, so he doesn't need to worry too much about this pressure, but the first thing that Dooka did was send out these Hellions across the map and try to get in his opponent's face. We do actually see that Holophonist is going for a gigantic bust. There are now 12 roaches on the production tab. There's a Baneling nest already done. He really wants to punish his opponent for going for Hellion play. He's decided that the best way to do this is to just make a whole bunch of roaches, make a whole bunch of Zerglings, and just blow up this front door. Dooka's desperately, desperately trying to wall that in as fast as he can, though it's going to be a little while before he has the tech he needs to defend it. As we see, siege tech has only just started, and the roaches are done. They're moving across the field. They have 22 Zerglings also being made to back them up. The supply is almost 30 different. It looks as though Dooka is in a ton of trouble. So what does he do with these Hellions? He needs to find something to do with them, and it's almost like he's playing Zerg. He goes for a run-by. He threatens his opponent, basically. What he's doing right now is a gigantic kind of posturing move. He says, you can go ahead for your attack, but if I survive it, I will have gotten into your natural and gutted your economy, and I'll be able to recover from there. Do you think you will? So unfortunately for him, this wall is too tight for the Hellions to get in and do very much damage. As you see, only one of them left right there. But it has bought him absolutely critical time. We see the one siege tank is out already. Siege tech is almost done with the second siege tank about to join the field. He's had time to get all of these workers off the line. Don't pull mules off the line, though, bad Dooka. In order to defend against this attack. He has 6 blue flame Hellions, and all of a sudden, this looks really possible for him to hold off. The siege tank shots already start taking out some of the banelings before they're even able to impact on the buildings. Holophonist sees that defense and says, you know what? I don't think it's worth it. I don't think I'm going to be able to break through and do enough damage. I don't know for sure if that was necessarily the right choice. He might have been able to, but if nothing else, the run-by gave Dooka enough time to defend against that, and that's going to be a consistent theme I'll be reminding people of throughout this cast and analysis, is that he is going to be in his opponent's face almost all the time, and that's what's going to allow him to take the number of bases that he needs to be successful. For example, the second he feels safe doing it, all of these Hellions are moving out across the field, and all of these roaches were actually, like, they were moving in to try to make sure that this base wasn't going to be going up, but now they're desperately running after these Hellions because Holophonist is trying to double expand, and he's like, oh man, I can't get any of my drones out there. I can't do anything with my Zerglings against these blue flame Hellions. I can't spread creep. I have to keep these roaches at home in order to deal with this incredible threat that's just looming on my doorstep. The second I try to move out, he's going to get in and kill all my stuff. So all of these roaches that could be very, very effectively used to try to deal with this base when it lifts up and starts floating over are now incapable of doing that. So I'm going to pause real quick just to look at a couple of interesting things. Because all of these roaches have not been able to attack, they've missed their chance. There are now 3 factories up, triple producing siege tanks with, look at the units tab, 4 already on the field with 2 more that are on the way. And so once you have about 6 to 8 siege tanks, if you siege them up properly, you're able to defend this base no problem against pretty much anything less than about 15 or 20 roaches, with a couple of like 1 or 2 bunkers, or even just some Hellions to soak up shots. This base is now totally fine, and any kind of roach pressure that Holophonist was going to do that doesn't involve just an enormous number of roaches is totally invalid. He's lost the timing window to do that. And because he has a whole bunch of roaches and has mostly been able to scare away these Hellions, are going to be chased away from this base in a moment, we see that DookaDooka has transitioned into 2 starport Banshee play. So he knows that his opponent hasn't gone for a very fast lair attack. That means he won't have the 2 critical ways of dealing with Banshees easily, which are Infestors and Mutalisks. Until you have lair tech and have researched either a Spire or an infestation pit with pathogen glands, you're pretty much relying on Queens and on Spore Crawlers. And so long as he can kind of deny scouting of this, so his opponent doesn't get any kind of advance warning to deal with it, he'll be able to keep the pressure on. And DookaDooka will be desperately trying to keep his opponent from getting in and just killing all of his stuff as time goes on. So he's now trying to spread a whole bunch more creep, which I definitely do like when you're trying to double expand this way. I think it's a very, very good thing to try to get as much creep spread as possible. Making a whole bunch of drones, definitely smart. But these 2 Banshees are on the way, with another command center being built, expanding behind the pressure he's about to put on. So I'm just going to bring this up to faster times 2 to try to get this going. Because he doesn't have the Hellions out yet, just gets in here, only kills like 1 drone, I think. Yeah, he's only killed 2 workers. He's not trying to get in and get the gigantic Slayer's blue flame Hellion shots that allow you to kind of like instantly kill your Zerg opponent. He just needs the pressure. As we see right here, the pressure is what's important. A whole bunch of panic Spore Crawlers going up this base, having all of the units, or the workers, chased away from it. Right now, Holophonist is going for a bit of a counterattack, but it's really kind of lackluster. All of his attention's right here. He doesn't quite know what he's going to be able to do to deal with it. As soon as these Banshees are feeling under the pressure a little bit from these 2 Queens and a couple of Spore Crawlers, they immediately pull back. So this 1 Banshee, very, very nice back home as well, because it forces his opponent to do something with these roaches. He has to attack, or he has to leave. But once again, this isn't that many roaches, and with this siege tank and this siege tank in position, he's able to, like, look at how fast those go away. Even though he lost the 1 siege tank, particularly with this group of Hellions, and several siege tanks actually already ready to go, that group of roaches totally owned, basically. And the supply, particularly when you compare it to how that horrible attack came in for, or horribly dangerous, I should say, attack came in for Dooka, was the supplies evened out quite a bit. A little bit of clumsy play right there, losing the Banshees pretty much for free because that one Spore Crawler was moved up. But the second the Banshees are down, what does he do? Immediately puts on more pressure. All these Hellions go running by and start trying to target down a couple of drones. Can't do that, so they end up just gutting the Zergling numbers. We end up looking at the units tab after this. Zerg player has 10 Zerglings, 8 Roaches, and 4 Banelings. That's his whole defense. He does not feel safe trying to pressure his opponent at all. And what happened behind that attack? DookaDooka expanded. He now has his 4th base coming up, and he's going to be turning it into a planetary fortress. This will be done by the time there's any number of units on the field large enough to try to actually come in and kill it. Also, 2 more Banshees coming in right here, sniping. They got 1 Infestor there and almost got another one, just putting on more and more and more pressure. There's absolutely no way the Holophonist feels safe trying to get in and deny this base. Now, he did have 7 Infestors coming out, so he will be able to come in and deal with these Banshees with a little bit of sharper control. Dooka even would have been able to save them, though unfortunately they do go down right there. But once again, how does Holophonist really feel right now? He feels terrified because every single time he even thinks about moving out of his base, some Blue Flame Hellions or Banshees come in. But because DookaDooka has been macroing very, very well, he's been able to get up to an even number of bases with his Zerg opponent and is building up to that kind of Mech death ball that he really wants to have. So as we see right now, actually, I do think I'm going to increase the speed just a little bit because now we see the first move out happening. There's +1 attack on the way, just generally good play. There's the Hive and Spire on the way, which does definitely suggest that Holophonist wants to go on to Broodlord Tech. And actually, I'm going to pause this real quick just for a little bit of a kind of brief public service announcement for people who've been watching the resources tab. These players are about diamond level, and so they're not the Super Gosu times 8 amazingest Korean players. But that doesn't mean we don't have a lot that we can learn from them. And so they both definitely make some macro mistakes. For example, having 3k in the bank is really never a good thing. But they kind of make about the same number of mistakes. And we can even see the way that they end up trying to handle those mistakes as the game goes on being valuable. So I just wanted to throw that out there for everybody who is kind of looking at that and going, what? Why is he casting this game? And it's because even if the exact execution isn't as perfect as it might be in the hands of a professional, it's still good enough to get the thought processes that the players had behind them across to us. So this one attack moving out, killing a whole bunch of stuff. This base is now totally invalidated. What's he doing behind this attack? Expanding. He's taking this base. And even though his opponent goes for a gigantic counterattack, this planetary fortress is pretty safe against that. We can see on the mini-map the units moving out, so I'm actually going to slow this down a little bit because this attack is continuing on. So he's taken out one base and is in danger of losing his own. And as we see, this planetary fortress gets 43, 47, 49, 52 kills before it finally goes down. So that's the second major point that I want to kind of bring up about mech play on fewer resources per base maps. The first one is that you should be pressuring your opponent a lot. I think that Dooka's play has been amazing for trying to just get in his opponent's face so that he can safely take expansions. The second point is that when you do take those expansions, don't be afraid to invest a whole bunch in static defenses and things like planetary fortresses and, as the Spire tech completes, missile turrets. Because it's much more important to have the base on a few resources per base map than to have the base and it be an orbital. Because he had that big bank, and just generally mech tends to leave you with a lot of minerals and not very much gas, Dooka is building a whole bunch of command centers that he's going to turn into orbital commands. And that is very nice for him for 2 reasons. The first is the obvious one, because more orbital commands are always good. The second is that because he's expanding all over the map, he is going to be kind of vulnerable to counterattacks. And he just knows that. He knows he's playing mech. So he knows that he's going to have to deal with things like Zerglings, like Mutalisks and stuff like that, coming in and denying bases, potentially even killing command centers and planetary fortresses. So if he has just a whole bunch of command centers kind of built in the background, he can just lose this base as an example, just lift off a new one, plant it right down. He loses that one, lift it off a new one, plant it right down, rebuild some defense, things like that. So long as he can get consistent gas income and be throwing down a lot of mules at the bases that he does have that are safe, his income's going to be fine. And so really, really don't be afraid to throw down a lot of static defenses in order to try to take and hold your bases. And if you have the option to, make a whole bunch of orbital commands and use them for kind of the just generally good stuff that we see people build a whole bunch of orbital commands in general for, but also so that if you do happen to lose a base to the run by, you just instantly retake it. It's not as big a deal. It's not as though you just lost like 25% of your income. You kind of like lose it for about 20 seconds while you float the new base over, and then you just immediately retake it. So, going to be getting right back into this. This one push moving into a very nice position. For those who watched my analysis of Crosspoint and Analysis 2, you'll know that this is an amazing cut-in zone, because when you gain control of this low ground, you can move up into the natural or down into the third, and your opponent can't know which one you're pressuring up into. Also, when you have a bunch of siege tanks and you control a space like this, they can't rally their forces to one or the other particularly efficiently. They have to spread them out and hope for some kind of surround. They can't try to mass them up for a single kind of concentrated attack to break you. One of the major mistakes that Dooka unfortunately makes is that his opponent gets the Spire out, realizes that he just doesn't have time to get up the Bro Lords, and so builds some Mutalisks, and Dooka is caught totally off guard by this. He has no Thors, he has no Marines, he has nothing that can shoot up, and so he just tries to deal as much damage as he can, goes in, starts sniping down this hatchery. So even though he's going to end up losing this entire mech force, which is very expensive, very unfortunate, he gets in, kills some workers, kills a couple infestors, and is going to be able to take down the natural base. And so, very good decision making right there for him, and that he knows, like, ah, man, I'm just not going to be able to deal with this in the way that I want to, so I'm at least going to hurt my opponent as much as I can, because these forces were never going to get home. His enemy was just way too fast with the Mutalisks and Zerglings. They were going to die. So he just kind of accepted that and said, you know what, I'll just let him die. There's no reason to freak out over it. Do as much damage as you can. That's great. And behind that pressure and attack that he's been able to put up, he has this base already turning into a planetary. This base already done as a planetary. To his opponent, having lost this base and lost his natural, and only just now getting this base saturated. We see it. They have like barely been mined at all. Because they start with 2,000 on a fewer resources per base map. And so now that this base is nice and safe, some Blue Flame Hellions around, there's no way that these Zerglings are going to be able to go in there. I would have liked to have seen some maybe infested Terran bombs or even just using the Mutalisks, but still, Dooka, because of his pressure, has been able to kill several of his opponent's bases, and is now a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 base Terran against his opponent's 4 base Zerg, and is, despite the supply disadvantage, economically doing exceptionally well. So, he has these orbital commands finished up, ready to go, dropping a whole bunch of mules. Very nice things right there. Going to want to get the gas saturated as soon as you can. And once again, with the second point, the static defense is good. Building just a whole bunch of missile turrets, because his opponent only has 10 Mutalisks out on the field. And 4 missile turrets with repair will easily deal with 10 Mutalisks. And so he can just take this base and be totally fine with it. Throw down a whole bunch of mules and try to strip mine it as fast as he can and get a lot of benefit in the short term. So I'm actually going to speed this up so that we can eventually get through this replay at some point tonight. So the Mutalisks kind of come on in. They say, oh crap, it turns out that missile turrets and planetary fortresses are pretty good. And so he is forced to pull back. Immediately going, saturating these gases right now. Very, very smart by Dooka. And getting the second attack upgrade, but his opponent is going up to the Bro Lords, so he is going to need to be dealing with that sooner rather than later. So I'm actually going to go up to faster ×4 while we wait for more action to happen on the field. And we do see now this pretty intimidating mech force moving out across the map, so I'm actually going to go right just down to ordinary faster. Holophonist did feel the pressure and built a lot of Mutalisks right there. That might not quite have been the right decision, but this was a very well-timed move out to where he felt as though, crap, I just need units right now. And so I can't wait for the Broodlords to be morphing when they just get owned by a whole bunch of Thors who are dealing damage to them if they happen to be stacked up. So as we see just on the units, it's 6 Hellions, 8 Thors, and 5 Siege Tanks against 11 Infestors, pretty good number of lanes, about 60, and 21 Mutalisks. So he gets, once again, this very sweet position. He's able to siege up, deny this base, and really, really make his opponent kind of panic. There's absolutely no way that, I'm just going to pause this for just a moment, there's no way that he's going to risk counterattacking this base or this base while this attack is going on. So if he was to, say, send, like, the probably 40 or 50, Zerglings that it would take to bring down this planetary fortress when it's being repaired by all of these SCVs, then Dooka would kind of look at that and say, oh, I guess you I guess you didn't really want your natural in main, and just kind of go in and kill him. So this is forcing his opponent to not think about counterattacks, not think about going in for harass, because the same thing is true if he sent in the Mutalisks. If he sent the Mutalisks over here, he just kind of pull these SCVs back, throw down a whole bunch of missile turrets here, send this Thor and this Thor on over to defend, and just go and gut his opponent while he was trying to do that kind of sillily decided counterattack. And once again, able to deny this base and generally get a lot of mileage out of this attack. And so, he's throwing down a scan right there. Don't quite know why, because he scanned that area earlier. Maybe, actually, he's probably worried about the infestors as I think about it. So, actually, a good decision on his part. Killing off a couple of Mutalisks for free. As you get good numbers of Thors, particularly with the attack upgrades, they deal actually quite well with Mutalisks if they stack up at all. So Holophonist is just desperately trying to get what he needs to deal with this. Now, actually, I want to pause right here, because for my own curiosity, those who are watching the production tab will be kind of like, what? What is this blasphemy that DookaDooka is doing? It's madness, madness. So I want to see if he scanned the Greater Spire. So DookaDooka Vision. He did not. He actually does not know that for sure, so he's actually just blindly moving into Raven. I assume that he kind of suspects that Bro Lords are coming because he's seen the Mutalisks out on the field, he's seen a whole bunch of Infestors, he knows that that's just a really, really good and standard transition, but the answer that he's decided to go for is Ravens, and that has been seeing a lot more play recently, and I think is a very good decision when you're already meching to try to incorporate some Ravens in, because when Broodlords stack up, if you can Seeker Missile them, they die unbelievably quickly. So just getting back into the game, the enormous attack coming in, gigantic numbers of Magic Box Mutalisks marching right in. Unfortunately, this mech army was very, very clustered, so the Fungals hit like literally every unit in that gigantic stack. All of the Thors are killed off. Mutalisks come right in and clean that up. But actually, as we look at it, Holophonist lost a lot. The supplies are more even now than when the attack started. And there's a pretty noticeable mech army that's just already being rebuilt back home. This is not like ordinary mech in Terran versus really anything, where if you lose your main mech army, it's pretty much GG. The production ability that Dooka has been able to set up and the kind of lack of production ability that the Zerg currently has have made it so that he can lose an entire army and still come out ahead. And so, or maybe not necessarily ahead, but at least not as far behind. So you're just going to actually kind of times two it to get this going across. A little bit of indecision. He knows he wants to go and punish his Terran opponent with these Mutalisks somehow, but doesn't quite know where. So he ends up finding them right in, ends up sniping off these missile turrets, and he does deny this base. But ultimately, that's really not that big a deal when you have this base being built, these two bases already fine, and once again, a gigantic mech push out. So basically, Dooka says, you know what, have that base. I can see where your army is right now. I'm just going to go and deny some of your bases. Sends in a whole bunch of Hellions. He's able to get some pretty good hits off while these units are all on move command. He's able to march right in, deny this base. So even though his opponent has been able to kind of shut down his mining on one part of the map, he's able to march in and just like kind of eye for an eye, take out one of his opponent's bases while the Broodlords are still being morphed. So a pretty nice thing for him. He also has several orbital commands that he can just float over here the second that he has the time to. So Holophonist desperately trying to get these Broodlords into play right here. So they do end up moving in to engage. The Ravens have not joined this main force yet. They are still back in. I'm going to pause it real quick to show everybody where they are. They're still back somewhere around here. So what's the rally point? All the way over here. So yeah, there's only a couple Ravens on the field. They've not joined up. So this mech force is caught totally out of position and like completely owned. It's really one-sided right here. There's a whole bunch of Zerglings that end up getting killed off because Blueprint Hellions are pretty good. But ultimately, the Broodlords don't really take that much damage. They take some from the Javelin missiles. There's not like a single Infestor really that's lost. And that whole mech army is wiped out. But it's already being rebuilt behind the scenes. Just something that Dooka's very aggressive economic play has allowed him to do. A very good thing for him. And I'm actually going to pause right here. So think back on all of the major engagements that we've seen. This is the third point that I want people to take away from this. The first one is that putting a lot of pressure on your opponent when you're meching on FRB maps is really good. Lets you take bases and feel safe about it. The second is that static defense is really good, so don't be afraid to planetary fortress things and just use SCVs to mine there. Definitely build orbital commands behind the scenes when you can, but don't worry too much about it. PF that if you need to, so that it will be safer as time goes on. The third point is that if you can do parts 1 and parts 2, your macro advantage will be big enough that you can lose every battle and still do okay. DookaDooka, over the course of every battle that we've seen right here, has lost every engagement. If you just think back on it, like the one right here, he lost. The one right here, as he had all the siege tanks and wasn't expecting the Mutalisk to come out, he lost. His initial kind of poke-in with that counterattack with the Hellions, he lost. All of the time, he's lost every single engagement. And yet, because he's been able to safely take these bases and just macro so hard, he's been able to mostly stay in the game. His supply is definitely down right now because he lost that whole army. But he's still doing pretty good. And because of his harassment, his opponent also really isn't feeling like, nice, I just killed that army, I can totally go and counterattack. He only has 6 Broodlords and really 11 Infestors and 11 Mutalisks. That's like the kind of sum total of his really good units. But there's 2 Ravens, 3 Siege Tanks, and 1 Thor out, with several more of each of those being built right now. And so if he was to just kind of box this and go, sweet, now I have a big opportunity to counterattack, and try to 1A into his opponent, assuming the Seeker missiles landed, Dooka would be fine. So, third major point, if you're macroing well and harassing your opponent a lot so that they don't ever build up quite the death ball that they want, you're able to recover from even repeated bad engagements. Once again, Dooka has lost every big fight he's been in. But what does he do after he loses a big fight? Goes and harasses. He's trying to scare the hell out of his opponent and deal some economic damage. So these guys get right in here, and actually we can look at how many workers are being killed right now. Actually a pretty good amount. If these guys would just get behind the mineral line, they'd be able to end up killing off even more. But yeah, he ends up just slaughtering that mineral line. It's really, really good for him. And right now, Holophonist just trying to retake this base, but once again, what does DookaDooka have? He has 2 command centers right here. That is, the second he can clean out these Mutalisks, he can just retake this base, and potentially even look into, I honestly don't know why, he should just pick this up and float it right over here. There's no reason that he shouldn't have that base as well. And so, now for the 4th and final point, and I swear I will then stop interrupting and we can just watch the total badassery that is the rest of this video. I want to introduce a concept called macro-micro. This is going to be kind of weird for people, just bear with me for a second, because I think that for FRB it's a very, very critical point. What macro-micro is that in order to macro effectively on a fewer resources per base map, you actually need to micro your mining units to a pretty noticeable extent. So for example, what do we see right here? We see a stupid number of mules, and actually I think even more get dropped. I'll let this play for just a moment. Maybe I'm wrong. But regardless, that's a dumb number of mules. It's way too many. We can see that they're wasting time moving around back and forth. You shouldn't ever drop more than 6 on one base in a few resources per base map, particularly when you have this base. It's not like this base is mined out or anything. Several of the patches aren't even close. Like this one's barely even been touched. And so there's no reason to not drop them here. And there's no reason to have, I think that he has actually a pretty good number of SCVs here too. Actually, no, he has a pretty reasonable thing. But yeah, as long as you have several bases, you shouldn't ever go totally nuts just spamming a million billion mules on it. You need to micro in order to get your macro working well. Another little bit of macro-micro mistake that DookaDooka has made is that this base, his main, isn't even fully mined out, particularly this gas. So actually, he is almost out on that one. This, however, has like really, really not been fully mined out. He'd probably want to take that a little bit earlier, but the minerals right here are also not mined out. So there's no reason that he shouldn't be trying to drop at least a couple mules or have just a couple SCVs mining in his main and natural, because there's really no reason not to. If he had microed his SCVs and microed his mules a little bit better, he'd be getting even more money than the already like outrageous 2,000 minerals that he's getting, even though he's like 5 resources, or he's 5 workers behind, 6 workers behind his opponent. So macro-micro is a very important concept that I predict the best players, particularly things like the FRB Grand Tournament, shameless plug, FRB Grand Tournament. I'm going to be one of the folks who is organizing and casting that. Everybody should check it out. It's going to be awesome, going live this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. But I think that the best players who do very well in that will be the ones who are actually looking at each base and saying, am I getting everything I can out of this base? And if I'm actually not using everything effectively here, how can I spread out my SCVs or even drones, probes, whatever it is that you happen to have, so that they're appropriately distributed across all my fields and I'm using my macro techniques effectively, and I'm microing my macro techniques effectively to get the most money that I can. So that's the fourth and final point that I'm really going to be making, and really for the rest of this, we can just kind of watch the awesome unfold, because we do see that there are more Thors, more Ravens coming out right now. Burrow being researched, which will be very, very nice for harassment with those infestors. And because this is a super long cast, I have to pause and take a drink. Sorry, everybody. Ah, delicious. Oh, man. I do have to say, I was definitely thinking as this game was getting going, that I was like, oh my god, when am I going to be able to cast this? Because I need to invest not only a bunch of time in it, I need to, like, have my throat prepared to deal with the length of time and all of that. But anyway, as we look at the units tab right now, we have 6 Bro Lords with 4 more being morphed, actually 5 more being morphed. So right now, Holophonist is going for an incredibly intimidating Death Ball. The Death Ball of DookaDooka is doing pretty well, particularly with these Ravens, but it's not quite as scary. That's a hell of a lot of Broodlords that he's going to have to deal with. So I'll just slow this down to normal speed as he is dealing with his opponent's just kind of queen that he has in the middle, some of his creep spread. That's one nice thing, too, about incorporating Ravens is that you don't need to scan quite as often in order to try to clean up the creep and other nasty things like that. Bit of a Zerglin counterattack going on right here, and the Mutalisks will also be going in to try to do some kind of counterattack. But unfortunately for those Zerglings, they run into a bunch of Blue Flame Hellions. He has a lot of reactor factories working for him right now, so he's able to reproduce Hellions very quickly and churn through that huge mineral stockpile that he has. And even though these Mutalisks are able to come in and do that damage, what DookaDooka does, he just counterattacks. He sees, like, okay, I know that a lot of my opponent's supply is invested in trying to harass that base, so I'm just going to march right in here, counterattack, try to get my air units into a good position, and deal with this force. So honestly, what deals well with 19 Broodlords and how many Infestors? And 16 Infestors. Not many things deal very well with that. However, this is a pretty good composition to try. There's a lot of point defense drones, and particularly Seeker missiles, if he can get them involved, will be critical. So as we see right here, the Ravens have moved forward. They are providing some pretty good protection. One very good Seeker missile hit, a second one, third one, doing pretty well. There are also a couple of Vikings here who are doing some pretty good damage, picking off the weakened Broodlords, and also these Thors not doing too terribly bad against the Broodlords when the Broodlords are able to stack up on top of one another. However, because this mech army was just so clustered and so much of it was not spread out, DookaDooka ended up losing basically everything. So this kind of goes back to point number 3, where he has lost literally every major engagement. But kind of what does Holophonist have to then counterattack with? He has 4 Broodlords left over. He has a whole bunch of Infestors, and I would definitely like to see some Brofester hit squads, but aside really from just those Infestors, he can't do quite that much. Also, DookaDooka immediately trying to send in some kind of counterattack. He wants to keep his opponent scared because he knows he doesn't have the army to deal with this right now, so if he can just make sure that his opponent feels too intimidated to try a counterattack, he's gonna have the time to rebuild. So that's why he's going for things like Banshees. That's why he is going for, and once again, a macro-micro mistake. Look at this unbelievable number of mules. Holy God. Why in the world would you need 18 mules on a single base? Good Lord, man. Spend some right here. Spend some right here for the love of Jesus. Some pretty good harassment going on right here. This base has been denied, and a little bit of miss micro right here, losing an unfortunate number of orbital commands and stuff. But once again, because he built a whole bunch of them, he has 2 more left over. This orbital command bothers me so much. The fact that he never finished that over the course of the game just, like, totally drives me into a rage. But, oh well. Anyway, though, in the intervening time, we do see that because his opponent didn't feel safe moving out, DookaDooka has been able to close the supply gap quite a bit. He was down by almost 100 against his opponent, and is now down by only about 30. He's immediately going in, trying to do some harassment, really abusing the slowness of Broodlords and Infestors. Because honestly, Infestors really aren't even all that fast when you get right down to it, and Broodlords are obviously extremely slow, and so just trying to make sure that his opponent knows that if he moves out across the map, there will instantly be a run-by to go and punish him for having the slower army. So as we see right here, even more pressure going on. He hits right here with the Hellions in order to draw his opponent's Infestors away. What does he do? Immediately attack over here with the Banshees, so that the Infestors are kind of like, ah, god damn it, and need to kind of waddle their whole way, all the way across the map to try to get over here. A couple of Vikings moving around, just trying to kind of hunt around and see what they can kill as well. This is giving him time as well. This large amount of pressure is giving DookaDooka time to get this mech force into the position that he wants. This is a little bit vulnerable because it's actually like on creep and in easy visible range of creep tumors, but still, it is giving him the time that he wants in order to successfully move into the kind of later death ball parts of the game that he wants. And pretty much just some micro or macro from both players right now, getting more Vikings, more of the very nice Banshees and stuff. This base totally denied, this base kind of undersaturated, and this one base really not being used at all, while DookaDooka is still on at least 2 mining bases, and honestly, if he had better macro micro, he would have these bases mining as well and still be doing really good stuff. Once again, harassing this base, moves on in, starts harassing this base, really just trying to split up his opponent's death ball as much as he can while he builds his own. It's a fantastic, fantastic approach to mech play. I'm going to speed this up just a little bit so that we can get through this replay at some point. The gigantic death ball amassing up huge numbers of Brolords, and they are now moving out across the field. A very, very, very large number of Hellions moving in to say something about the Broodlings, though. Bringing down this destructible rocks right here, and we're gonna watch this in normal so that all the Terran players can cry. Terran players cry. I was like, I was a spectator in this, and to everybody else, I was just screaming like, no! No! Because if he'd been able to hold on to those units, get them nice and spread out, land a couple of good Seeker missiles, it would have been totally possible for Dooka to roll this army and end the game pretty much right then. So, unfortunately, though, he has to try it with just 2 Ravens and 1 Viking instead, well, 2 Vikings, actually, instead of, like, 8 Vikings and 6 Ravens, which would have been, obviously, much, much better. Though, once again, to continue, like a broken record, the harassment of DookaDooka moving right in, killing off everything at this base, He drove them by this base and was like, aw, there's no more things for me to roast. As we look at the units tab, it's now only 24 drones against 29 SCVs. That would be one thing that DookaDooka could have done a lot better, is that he didn't really ever have a large number of SCVs. But as we see right here, it does mean he can have a very, very large army. And so, once again, trying to deal with this gigantic death ball is really difficult. He just doesn't quite have the units he really wants in order to deal with it. But he's able to deal enough damage that it's pretty successful, and his opponent doesn't feel like he can counterattack. As we see on the supply tab, he's at only a little bit less supply than his opponent, even though he had a little bit of advantage before it. Definitely a very nice engagement for Holo. But DookaDooka, and because of his very, very good macros, immediately able to rematch his opponent's supply. And during all of that, counterattack with the Hellions comes right in here, kills off all of the workers at this base. These guys still haven't been cleaned up. Anytime there was any drone that was even like thought about heading over here or anything like that, really nothing going on. So as we look at the income tab, right now, Holo is actually starting to starve. Despite the fact that he has this fairly nice army, he just hasn't been able to hold down a base against the relentless mech harassment, which is not something that we even really think about very often. He's just not really been able to do anything about that, and because of that, he has almost no money. Look at the units tab, only 17 drones left. And these relentless packs of Hellions moving around. So I'm just going to speed this up a little bit. Because just a little bit of harassment going on now, and like, actually, I want to see 114 workers killed, and they're still going in for more, man. Still going in for even more. Really, like Dooka just showing the amazing potential of, as soon as you get the +1 upgrade for Hellions, they go right back to for Blue Flame Hellions, they go right back to being old Blue Flame Hellions and 2-shot workers. And if you can be very, very consistent about harassing your opponent for having too many bases and not enough like static defense and stuff, then you can punish that a lot. So big engagement going on in the middle though, but by now you guys should kind of know the theme. He does not end up faring that well when you get right down to it. He fares a lot better, actually, for this particular one. He's able to get in, kill off most of the Brolords, But because there's a whole bunch of infested Terrans right here, and burrows pretty good, he burrows all of the infestors and is able to use those infested Terrans to kill off a lot of his opponent's very expensive units. As we look at the units tab, there's only 3 Ravens left and 1 Thor, with just a couple of Hellions and Vikings on the field. There's a kind of Ghost transition here that I don't quite agree with. I really feel like that money would just be better spent trying to get more metal on the field to try to go and directly kill his opponent, but it's what DookaDooka ended up deciding to do, so awesome for him. These infestors burrowed very, very cleverly, trying to regen their energy. They are going to want to do something before this base is fully denied, though, and there we go. There's a whole bunch of these infestors, infested Terrans tossed down, and with a couple of good fungals, they're able to clean that up, but at the same time, these relentless packs of Hellions just marching around, killing off everything. They're, in fact, just about to kill off a hatchery. Counter to buildings, Hellions. And they kind of even just check back at this base. Like, are there any drones here? Aww, I was so hoping there were going to be some. He's able to retake this base, however, and like by just floating over, I think his main actually was what he ended up floating over there. However, because of some burrowed infestor play and some infested Terrans, that base is pretty quickly denied. So really just economic body blows as we see between the players. 27 drones against 29 SCVs. This base totally mined out. This base starting to be mined out, and really DookaDooka should be doing something about that base. This is where things start to get silly, and is kind of where analysis totally breaks down of this. The first part of this was all educational and analysis. The second part is really just fun and amusing shoutcasting, because what we just saw was a whole bunch of SCVs march in and take out a hatchery, which, like, anytime that happens in a game, you can kind of tell, like, oh yeah, this is getting weird. But there is a pretty good number of Ravens and these Vikings moving around the field. Marauding packs of Ghosts and Hellions moving around as well. A couple of Ghosts moving in right here. They might be able to get a couple of pretty good EMPs at this particular juncture. They move right in and kablam! Get a pretty good one. And are not able to get the second one. The Roaches are able to finish them off. Though they were able to scare the infestors away for long enough, they couldn't quite get the chain fungal on this anti-air stuff. Though, as we look at the units tab, Holo has very smartly decided, you know what, I'm done with air. I don't have the money for it. I just want roaches and infestors. That's how I'm going to end up kind of powering my way out of this. I'm just going to try and take as many bases as I safely can, which is pretty much like this one, and that's it. This one gets him a little bit, but not very much anymore. And he's just going to build the best ground army he can and hope that his opponent has overcommitted to air, and unfortunately it kind of looks like he has. He's continuing to build Ravens, continuing to build Vikings, kind of expecting his opponent to have a whole bunch of Broodlords, but like literally the Spire is just not even being utilized anymore. Once again, keeping on with the first point of ridiculous pressure. He lands these Vikings to just go over here, start trying to put some pressure on this base. He just never, ever wants to let the Zerg have a breath where he is able to start thinking about doing counterattacks or even just macroing particularly hard. So continuing to kind of send these units back and forth around the map. I would love to see these be sent back and repaired, particularly this guy, when you're in this super late game situation where you have like basically no money left over. Every unit is incredibly valuable, and so you don't want to lose something as expensive as a Raven because it happened to be hit by a fungal. But there are a whole bunch of infestors moving in, and Holo's lining them up. There's a pretty good shot that goes down right there, but the Roaches are able to kind of intercept. A pretty nice couple of Seeker missiles are dropped down, but ultimately not able to do all of that much, as the spread of Holophonist was pretty good, and now the chain fungals are unfortunately being dropped. The infested Terrans going pew pew pew, taking out the air power. And right now, how many units are actually left on the field? There's only 2 Thors, 2 Vikings, 2 Marines, and 2 Ravens. The 2-2-2-2 build, with 10 Roaches and 9 Infestors to try to counter them. I really do think that at this point the players are kind of getting tired and are just kind of like losing their focus, because, for example, if DookaDooka was still kind of in his right mind, I think he'd just lift this base off, take this base right here, start getting some of the macro advantage back under his belt. Though we do see that there are more drones being built by Holo, and there's this base that just got retaken, so a very good thing for him right there. Unfortunately, we do see that DookaDooka is mostly mined out, actually. As you look at the income tab, he's barely mining, like, anything. And so it does look like Holo is slowly getting his control, or getting the game back under control. Right now, it's pretty much all in from Dooka. He has all of his SCVs here set on auto repair, just the couple of Thors that he has left over, a couple of the Ravens that he's going to be attempting to do fun spellcaster stuff with. But this is actually a pretty good force for dealing with any kind of Thor and Raven play. So as we see right here, he is able to get in and take out this base. But the Ravens are floating around. I'm actually going to times 2 this because we can probably, anybody who's been paying attention, can probably basically predict how this ends up going down. Roaches move right in, go kaboom, one, kaboom, twice, able to take out these Thors even though they're being repaired. And unfortunately, because of the fungal and infested Terran combo, most of the Ravens get taken down easily. Only a couple manage to escape. And right now it's Dooka at 20 supply against Holo at 89. And Dooka doesn't have any mining bases. I think that, yeah, his income's like 100, so almost non-existent. While his opponent has 1 mining base, 2 mining base. But once again, never give up, never surrender. Continuing to try to go for the incredible pressure that has let him get this far in the game. But even when we look at the Harvesters, it's 40 against 8. And by just looking at the replay tab, we will see that in just a couple of seconds, there's going to be the GG. No, let's just speed that up. We kind of know how this is going to end at this point. A little bit more harass going on. We do see that some infested Terrans are being dropped right here, end up killing this off. But a whole bunch of the auto turrets are right there. And finally, after an almost hour-long game with a whole bunch of analysis and stuff like that, I hope that everybody's brains hurt as much as mine does. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want your brains to hurt. I want them to be hit by the thought hammer so that everybody goes out and tries mech and puts the awesome, awesome points that DookaDooka has pointed out for us to good use. So, for those who kind of want a quick recap, those points are, first is that if you're going to do mech on an FRB map, you need to be in your opponent's face a lot. Ultimately, you're gonna be kind of vulnerable to certain kinds of timing attacks, so you need to be so threatening that your opponent goes, ugh, if I do actually go for this attack, I'm gonna be so horribly hurt that I won't be able to recover from it. Another thing to keep in mind is that even if your opponent decides, you know what, I'm gonna go for the attack anyway, I know that he's just trying to scare me with the Hellions, well, excuse me. What you can then do is lift up your natural, float it back here, and just prepare to guard this ramp like crazy. Because if you have the 2 siege tanks up here, a whole bunch of buildings blocking in this ramp, you're gonna survive. There's almost no bust that can break down if you have like a factory here and like a factory here. There's just so much health in between your units and theirs, and particularly with the splash damage of siege tanks, you're gonna survive on just one base. And so if your opponent calls your bluff and you are able to get in, barbecue all the workers at the natural, barbecue a bunch in the main, you'll still be ahead. So it's only kind of a bluff. And you're just going to have to basically see if your opponent decides they want to go for it. If they do, retreat immediately. Don't even try to hold this. I don't think it will be really possible. And if they don't go for it, then fantastic. They are instead trying to out-macro you, and you can continue putting pressure on, taking lots of bases. It's really good. Second major point, lots of static defenses are always good. It's been a consistent theme of the analysis that I've been doing. Static defense is fantastic in FRB games, and we can really see how much it paid off for DookaDooka. This planetary fortress, when it was a planetary fortress and not an orbital, got 52 Zergling kills before the goddamn bastard went down. So he just like gutted his opponent's Zergling numbers, and pretty much after that, he was like, there was no way that Holo was going to try to take down this planetary fortress. He was just way too intimidated. He didn't want to lose that many Zerglings again. And so he was able to keep this base for literally the whole game. And it worked out great for Dooka. Also, this base was quite durable, and even though it did eventually get taken out a couple times, it was able to delay the Mutalisks and delay the Zerglings a lot, while DookaDooka got in and like killed this base and killed the Natural, for example, was one of the events in this game. So, third thing, if you have good harassment and good macro, you can lose a lot of battles with mech. In an ordinary mech game, basically if you lose your death ball, you're kind of dead. It's really hard to recreate it, and it's easy for your opponent to get so much money that they go and they have their like gigantic Broodlord Infestor army and they engage your mech army, and they manage to kill your mech army but only have like 6 Infestors and like a Broodlord left over, and then they go, lol, I have a 5,000, 2,000 bank, remax on roaches instantly, and while you're trying to desperately get out your next wave of units, you just get completely run over by the massive macro of your opponent. Obviously, these players had some fairly noticeable macro slip-ups, but I do think that FRB is just generally a lot more forgiving for if you do lose your army. If your opponent tries to counterattack, the defender's advantage is big enough, you'll be able to recover at least somewhat. It won't be as it won't be as obvious that you're dead. You'll be able to at least try to defend the inevitable counterattack. And the fourth and final point is that macro-micro is really important. When you have a whole bunch of mules, make sure you're dropping them effectively across your bases. Even when you just have a whole bunch of workers, make sure they're effectively spread. Remember that it's only 12 workers needed for full saturation on a 6 mineral base, with 3 on the gas for a total of 15. If you have more than that, you get some benefit of it, but say for example that you have 4 bases and 60 workers, you should try to just quickly flip through your bases and say, do I have the optimal number? And if not, just kind of relocate a couple of them so that you're getting absolute optimal saturation out of all of your bases. And particularly, let's say that you have like 4 bases but like 80 workers, make sure that you don't have like one base with 40 workers on it. Go and kind of like look around real quick, and if there's one that's massively oversaturated, spread it out a little bit, because it will noticeably help your income. And the more bases you have, the more you'll notice it, to have your workers fully spread out and to have all the gases taken and other things like that. So, thank you everybody for watching. I'm very, very happy to still be with all the people who stayed through all the way to the end, and I hope that everybody enjoyed this cast and is looking forward to more analysis type things. For those who don't know, the FRB Grand Tournament will be happening in just a couple of days, so stay tuned on that. We have Yaki, who is our fantastic producer, and he is looking through the games that we're going to be casting. We can only cast 4 of the sets on the first day. All the rest will be going up as VODs as we cast them later, and he has been saying that the games are already like unbelievably good. They're like totally kick ass, and so I can't wait to cast them, and I hope that all of you tune in and enjoy it. If you want to see the VODs, they will be going up on this channel, and if you want to watch live, go to cybersports.tv or go to directly go to twitch.com/PullSC, where my amazing co-caster Pull will be casting them for everybody with me alongside. And I feel like there's one other thing that I should plug. I can't quite remember it. Oh well, I'll think of it next time. Thank you everybody. This is Senex signing out.